Los Angeles, 1971, late summer. The heat sits on the city like a hand pressing down. Paramount Studios, Building 5, third floor. A conference room with no windows, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of coffee gone cold and cigarette smoke. Francis Ford Coppola sits at the head of a long table. 32 years old, beard, glasses, looks exhausted. He's been fighting this battle for 6 months. The studio doesn't trust him. The executives don't want his vision. They want a safe commercial gangster movie. He wants something else, something real, something that will last. Around the table sit 8 studio executives, suits, ties, men who measure success in box office numbers and foreign distribution deals. They've been arguing for 3 hours about casting, about budget, about whether this entire project is a mistake. On the table in front of Coppola sits a list, 37 names, actors being considered for various roles. Most of the big parts are cast. Marlon Brando as Vito Corleone, Al Pacino as Michael, James Caan as Sonny. But one crucial role remains open. Tom Hagen, the family lawyer, the adopted son, the consigliere, the voice of reason in a world built on violence. But what nobody knows yet is that this decision will nearly destroy the film. Coppola has someone in mind, Robert Duvall. He's worked with him before on a small film called The Rain People, knows what Robert can do, knows the quiet intensity he brings, the absolute believability, the way he makes every scene feel grounded in reality. But the studio executives don't know Robert Duvall, don't care about quiet intensity or believability. They want a name, someone who will sell tickets, someone with box office appeal. One executive, Charlie Bluedorn, head of Gulf Plus Western, which owns Paramount, speaks first. "Who the hell is Robert Duvall?" Coppola explains. Character actor, incredible range, did To Kill a Mockingbird. Been working steadily for years, perfect for Tom Hagen. Bluedorn isn't impressed, never heard of him. What else has he done that made money? Coppola lists credits: THX 1138, MAS *H True Grit, solid work, not lead roles, supporting parts, but always excellent. Another executive interrupts. So he's never carried a film? Coppola admits no, but Tom Hagen doesn't carry the film. He supports the family. That's literally the character, the guy who supports. This is the moment everything starts to fall apart. The executives aren't convinced. They want someone bigger: Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, Jack Nicholson. Names that mean something, names that guarantee international sales. Coppola argues. Those actors are wrong for the part. Tom Hagen is supposed to be invisible, professional, quiet, not a movie star. A lawyer who blends into the background until he's needed. Robert Duvall is perfect because he doesn't try to steal scenes. He serves the story. The studio executives exchange looks. This is exactly what worries them about Coppola. He keeps talking about serving the story instead of making a commercial product. He doesn't understand how the business works. They table the discussion, tell Coppola to bring in Robert Duvall for a screen test. Let's see what he's got. Wait, don't miss this detail. What's actually happening in this room isn't about acting. It's about control. 3 days later, Robert Duvall drives to Paramount. He's been here before, auditioned for dozens of roles over the years, sometimes gets the part, usually doesn't. He's learned not to expect anything, just do the work, let the chips fall. He parks in the visitor's lot, checks his watch, early, he's always early, military training. Show up before you're needed, be ready when opportunity arrives. Inside the building, he's directed to a soundstage, stage 12. When he walks in, it's bigger than he expected. Lights everywhere, cameras, crew members moving equipment, and at the center, a simple setup, a desk, 2 chairs, a lamp. Coppola walks over, shakes his hand. Thanks him for coming, explains the situation. The studio needs to see him on camera, needs to see how he reads with other actors. Standard procedure, nothing to worry about. But Robert can tell from Coppola's tone that it's not standard. There's tension here. Politics, studio pressure. He's been in this business long enough to read the room. Coppola introduces him to the other actor, Al Pacino, small guy, intense eyes. He's playing Michael Corleone. They'll do a scene together, the one where Tom Hagen tells Michael that his father has been shot, where everything changes for the family. They rehearse once, just blocking. Where to stand, where to move. Robert listens carefully, takes it in, doesn't overplan, doesn't overthink, just understands the situation and prepares to respond truthfully. This is where Robert Duvall's real struggle begins. In a small room off the soundstage, the studio executives gather. Bluedorn is there. So is Robert Evans, head of production. And three others whose names Robert doesn't know but whose power is obvious. They settle into chairs behind a monitor, ready to watch, ready to judge. Coppola calls for quiet, explains the scene to everyone. Tom Hagen comes to tell Michael that Vito has been shot. It's the moment the family's world cracks open. Michael has been separate from the business. Now he's being pulled in. Tom has to deliver this news carefully, has to navigate Michael's reaction, has to hold the family together while everything falls apart. The cameras roll. Robert steps into frame. He's wearing a simple dark suit, white shirt, thin tie, hair combed neat, glasses. He looks like a lawyer, not a movie star lawyer, a real lawyer, the kind you'd see in any courthouse in America. He delivers the line. Michael, your father's been shot. Simple, flat, almost emotionless. The way someone delivers terrible news when they have learned to control their reactions, when showing emotion would be unprofessional. Al Pacino responds, shocked, disbelieving, starting to panic. Robert stays calm, gives information, tells Michael what hospital, what happened, keeps his voice level, keeps the family business contained. Even in crisis, especially in crisis, Tom Hagen maintains control. The scene lasts 2 minutes. When it ends, Coppola says cut, looks at the monitor, looks satisfied. In the executive room, silence. Then Bluedorn speaks. He's stiff. Evans agrees, too controlled. Where's the emotion? His boss just got shot. Where's the panic, the fear? Another executive chimes in. He's boring, just standing there talking. No energy, no presence. You haven't seen Robert Duvall's biggest challenge yet. Coppola hears this through his headset. His heart sinks. They don't understand. They're looking for a performance. Robert is giving them a human being. He walks to the executive room, tries to explain. That's the point. Tom Hagen doesn't panic, can't panic. He's the one person in the family who stays rational. If he falls apart, everything falls apart. Bluedorn shakes his head. I don't care about rational. I care about interesting. This guy is putting me to sleep. He's got no charisma, no spark. He's just there. Evans adds another concern. And frankly, he doesn't look Italian. Tom Hagen is supposed to be part of this family. This guy looks like a Midwestern insurance salesman, Coppola reminds them. Tom Hagen is Irish-German. That's in the book. He's adopted. He's not blood. That's the whole point. He's the outsider who became family. The executives aren't interested in the book. They're interested in box office. And a stiff, boring actor with no charisma doesn't sell tickets. Coppola asks for another test. Different scene. Let Robert show more range. They agree. But they're skeptical. The next day, Robert returns. This time they'll do the scene where Tom Hagen confronts Jack Woltz, the movie producer. The scene with the horse head, one of the most important scenes in the film, where the audience sees the Corleone family's power, where Tom Hagen shows what he's capable of when pushed. Robert prepares differently this time. He knows what they want to see. Range, power, presence, but he also knows that's not who Tom Hagen is. Tom Hagen doesn't perform power. He simply has it. Quiet, contained, dangerous precisely because it's so controlled. But this is the most shocking part. What Robert Duvall chose to do next. The cameras roll. The actor playing Woltz, John Marley, sits behind a big desk, arrogant, dismissive, treating Tom Hagen like an errand boy. Robert stands in front of the desk, same calm demeanor, same quiet voice, explains what Mr. Corleone wants, a role for Johnny Fontaine. Woltz refuses, gets loud, gets angry, tells Tom to get out. Robert doesn't react, doesn't raise his voice, doesn't threaten, just says very quietly, Mr. Corleone is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately. The way he delivers that line. The threat isn't in volume, it's in certainty, in the absolute knowledge that consequences are coming. That's Robert's power as an actor. Making you believe something terrible will happen without ever raising his voice. The scene continues. Woltz keeps yelling. Robert stays calm, stays professional, stays deadly. When it ends, Coppola is thrilled. That's it. That's Tom Hagen. Quiet power, controlled menace, the steel fist in the velvet glove. In the executive room, different reaction. Bluedorn turns to Evans. Still too stiff. Still no energy. I'm not feeling threatened by this guy. I'm bored. Evans nods. We need someone with more presence, more danger. This guy is playing it too safe. As the executives approached, Robert Duvall turned around. That afternoon, Coppola receives a call. The studio has decided they don't want Robert Duvall. They want someone else, Martin Sheen. Or maybe Robert Redford, someone with movie star quality. Coppola argues, fights, explains again why Robert is perfect. But the studio is firm. This is their money, their decision. Cast someone else or we'll find a director who will. Coppola hangs up, sits in his office, defeated. He's fought so many battles on this film, fought to cast Pacino when they wanted someone more established, fought to cast Brando when they said he was too difficult, fought for every creative decision, and he's exhausted. But then something unexpected happens. Marlon Brando calls Coppola, says he's heard about the Tom Hagen situation, says he watched the screen tests, all of them, not just Robert's, everyone they're considering. Coppola is surprised. Brando usually doesn't get involved in these things, doesn't care about other casting, just does his own work. But Brando says, I need to tell you something about Robert Duvall. Coppola listens. Brando says, when I first saw his test, I thought the same thing the studio thought. Too stiff. Too controlled, too boring. Coppola's heart sinks. But then Brando continues. But I watched it again, and I realized something. He's not stiff. He's contained. There's a difference. Stiff means nothing is happening inside. Contained means everything is happening inside, but he's controlling it. That's Tom Hagen. That's the character. Brando pauses, then says, everyone else is trying to act powerful. He's actually powerful. He doesn't need to show it. You can see it in his eyes, in the way he stands, in the way he doesn't need to prove anything. That's real. That's dangerous. Brando tells Coppola to fight for Robert, says, if you cast someone with more obvious charisma, they'll overpower Pacino. Michael needs to be the center. Tom Hagen needs to support him. Robert Duvall knows how to support. That's his genius. He makes everyone else better. Everyone learned the truth, but the real shock was Robert Duvall's reaction. Coppola hangs up, feels renewed. If Marlon Brando, the greatest actor of his generation, sees what Robert is doing, then Coppola isn't crazy. He's right. He calls the studio back, demands another meeting, says he won't make the film without Robert Duvall as Tom Hagen, says it's a deal breaker. The studio panics. They've already spent money. Sets are being built. Other actors are contracted. They can't afford to lose Coppola now. They agree to one more test, final test, but this time with Brando. 3 days later, everyone gathers on set. Robert arrives, doesn't know about Brando's call, doesn't know about the politics, just knows he's getting one more chance. They set up a scene. The one where Tom Hagen tells Don Corleone about Sonny's death, where Tom has to deliver the worst news a father can hear, where he has to hold himself together while the man he loves like a father falls apart. Brando sits in the Don's chair, makeup making him look older, weaker. This is after he's been shot, after he's lost power. Coppola calls action. Robert walks in, sees the Don, sees the man who saved him as a child, who gave him a life, who made him family. And for the first time in any of these tests, Robert let something slip. Not much, just a tiny crack in the professional facade. His voice catches, just for a second. When he says, Santino is dead, Brando reacts, as the Don, as a father, collapsing inside, trying to maintain dignity. Robert watches him, and you can see everything Robert is feeling. The grief, the guilt, the helplessness, all contained behind those glasses, behind that professional mask, but visible, just barely visible, like watching someone drown behind glass. The scene lasts 5 minutes. When it ends, the soundstage is silent. Brando stands, walks to Robert, shakes his hand, says quietly so only Robert can hear, "That's how you do it." In the executive room, Bluedorn leans back, says to Evans, "Okay, I get it now." Evans nods. The kid can act. Robert Duvall gets the role. The Godfather begins filming. Robert shows up every day, does his work, doesn't try to steal scenes, doesn't compete with Brando or Pacino or Khan, just plays Tom Hagen, the quiet man. the contained man, the man who holds everything together. There's a moment during filming that becomes legendary among the crew. They're shooting the scene where Tom tells Michael that the Don wants to meet with the other families. It's Michael's first real moment as the new Don. His first command decision. Robert delivers his lines, gives Michael the information, waits for the decision, and in that waiting, you see everything. Respect, concern, pride, fear, all contained in a look that lasts 3 seconds. After the take, Coppola calls cut, walks to Robert, says, "That look, that's the whole movie right there. That's what this story's about. Loyalty, family, the weight of power. You just said all of that without saying anything?" Robert shrugs, says simply, "That's the job." March 1972. The Godfather premieres. Becomes an instant phenomenon. Critics rave. Audiences line up around the block. It becomes the highest-grossing film of all time, wins 3 Oscars, changes cinema forever. Robert Duvall receives his first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Doesn't win. Joel Grey wins for Cabaret. Robert doesn't mind. He knew the work was good. The recognition is nice. The nomination is enough, but something else happens. Something more important. Directors start calling, not for leading men, for the roles that require truth, for the characters who support the story, for the parts where someone needs to be absolutely real or everything falls apart. Robert becomes the actor other actors want to work with. Because he makes them better, doesn't compete, doesn't try to steal focus, just does honest work that elevates everyone around him. Years later, a film student interviews Coppola, asks about the casting of The Godfather, about the fights with the studio, about Robert Duvall. Coppola says the studio thought Robert was too stiff, too boring, no charisma. They wanted a movie star. The student asks, what changed their mind? Coppola smiles. Marlon Brando taught them the difference between performing power and being powerful. Robert Duvall doesn't perform anything. He just is. And that's why he's one of the greatest actors who ever lived. The student asks, did Robert know how close he came to losing the role? Coppola shakes his head. I never told him. He just showed up, did the work, stayed true to the character, didn't try to be more interesting or more charismatic, just stayed true. And that truth saved the film. Because if Tom Hagen had been played by someone trying to be a movie star, trying to steal scenes, trying to compete with Brando and Pacino, the whole thing would have fallen apart. The Godfather works because Tom Hagen is the steady hand, the calm center, the man who doesn't need to prove anything. That's Robert Duvall. That's always been Robert Duvall. 2015, Robert is 84, still working. Someone asks him about The Godfather, about nearly losing the role, about Brando going to bat for him. Robert says he didn't know about most of it until years later. Didn't know the studio didn't want him. Didn't know Brando made that call. Just knew Coppola believed in him. And that was enough. The interviewer asks, what would you have done if they'd chosen someone else? Robert thinks for a moment, then says, moved on to the next role. That's the job. You can't control who gets cast. You can only control the work. And if you do honest work, eventually someone notices. Eventually someone gives you the chance. He pauses, then adds, the studio thought I was too stiff, too boring. Maybe I was. Maybe I am. But stiff and boring can work if it's truthful. If it serves the character. If it serves the story. That's the lesson. Not from winning the role, from almost losing it. From staying true even when people say you're not enough, even when they want you to be more charismatic, more interesting, more like a movie star. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to perform power, refuse to seek attention, just do the work, tell the truth, support the story. Tom Hagen taught Robert Duvall that lesson. Or maybe Robert Duvall taught Tom Hagen. Either way, and 72 hours changed everything. 72 hours between being told you're too stiff and proving that stillness is strength. What about you? Are you trying to be the loudest person in the room, the most charismatic, the most noticeable, or are you willing to be the steady hand, the contained power, the truth that doesn't need to perform? Because Hollywood will always want movie stars, but cinema needs something else. It needs people who show up, do honest work, Make everyone around them better. That's Robert Duvall. That's Tom Hagen. That's the lesson from 1971 that still matters today. 72 hours. That's all it took. 72 hours between rejection and vindication. Between being told you're not enough and becoming irreplaceable. What are you doing with your 72 hours?